صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب أرنا الحق حقا فأتبعه والباطل باطلا فأجتنبه ولا تجعله متشابها علي فأتبع هواي بغير علم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, O Messenger of Allah. Sallallahu alayka wa ala ahli baytika al-ma'sumin al-madlumin. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you and upon the infallibles of your holy household. Sallallahu alayka ya Sayyidi ya Aba Abdullah. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, O Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, Shaheed Karbala, martyred on the land of Karbala. Say it with me. Shaheed Karbala, martyred on the land of Karbala. Say it with me. Shaheed Karbala. Let Imam al-Hussein hear you in Karbala. Shaheed Karbala, martyred on the land of Karbala. Madloom Karbala. Say it with me. Madloom Karbala, oppressed on the land of Karbala. Say it with me. Oppressed on the land of Karbala. Madloom Karbala. I wanted Imam al-Hussein to hear you tonight. Madloom Karbala, oppressed on the land of Karbala. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya laytana kunna ma'akum. Surely we wish we were with you. فنفوز فوزا عظيما. And surely that would be for us a great victory. Salawat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 2, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this holy verse, that book, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ, this is a reference to the Holy Quran. He says, لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, there is no doubt in it. هُدًى, a guidance, لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, to those who are God-weary and God-conscious. Last night we spoke about the importance of the intellect in Islam. We spoke about how the intellect is not only important to Muslims. We said that the intellect is an essential core, focal point to humanity. For, as we heard yesterday, that narration states that the intellect is what is commanded and what is forbidden. And it is the intellect then that is punished and the intellect that is rewarded. So that tells us then that the central focal point of humanity is the intellect. And we said that the intellect in itself and that narration in itself is a clear indication to us that choice is also a focal point in our lives as humans. But the question is, how can I make the right choice? How do I know what is good for me and what is bad for me? And most specifically, what Allah wants of me, for what Allah wants of me can only be good. We proved yesterday, first and foremost, before we buy into this concept that is being presented to us of the intellect and its importance, that we must first and foremost prove that Allah exists. And we did that. We took 3 proofs of Allah's existence, correct? You remember them? I want you, during these lectures, to take the initiative of writing down these notes. And there's a reason why I tell you this. Because everything I tell you, you're going to need for the rest of your life. You're going to need either for yourself or to educate your brothers in religion, or your cousins in blood, or your brothers in blood, or people that you meet who have questions about themselves and their purpose. Those people who don't have an answer about Allah and why they exist and whether a God exists or not. Surely you can change the world with such knowledge. And so we concentrated, and we mentioned yesterday quite a bit, the issue of information. We said that knowledge is extremely important. And we said that discerning between and separating between the correct type of knowledge and the wrong type of knowledge then becomes important to us, and that the way to do that is through the intellect. After we look at the proof of Allah's existence, we then proved the oneness of Allah, Tawheed. Once we buy into this idea of the oneness of Allah, which is really a logical necessity, we exercise it every day in our workplace. We exercise it every day in our household. We have a head of a household. We have a head and a president of an organization. We have a CEO of a company. We have a president of a nation, right? And even with a group of nations, there's always one who is more powerful. Am I right? So that tells us then that there being one leader, one creator or organizer who is most knowledgeable, is a logical necessity. You see, in the West, what we're faced with and bombarded with, something that has become a part of our daily reality in schools, not just in the halls of academia, is this idea of chaos theory. Does everybody know what that is? Coincidence. Good, he knows what chaos theory is. Chaos theory then preaches coincidence. Now we've proven the oneness of Allah, we've proven His existence. The question is, does coincidence exist? Is chaos a valid theory or not? How many of us can answer that question? Today I will give you 2 proofs that disprove chaos theory and coincidence. Are you ready for them? These proofs are very simple. I'll give you the very first one. Listen to me, young man. Listen to me. I want you to learn this. There was a Muslim professor in Sydney, Australia. He had a conference to go to. So, he set off to go to that conference. As he was going to the conference, the people who are at the conference were sitting waiting for him to come and present. The clock kept on ticking, and they kept on waiting and waiting. An hour passed, 2 hours passed, 3 hours passed. He finally showed up. They said to him, "Where were you?" He said, "Well, today I decided not to take the car. I decided to be eco-friendly. I decided to walk. So as I was walking, on my way, I came by a river. I said, well, I better stand at the riverbank and wait." "Wait for what?" they said. He said, "For the twigs to come together so that they would make a raft for me so that I could cross the river." They said, "That's such a ridiculous, absurd notion." He said to them, "Really? Why?" They said, "Because there's no way that these twigs would come together for that to happen." He said, "Well, why is that a ridiculous and absurd notion? And this world coming together out of coincidence is not an absurd and ridiculous notion to you." Very simple proof, right? I'll give you another proof. This one you can use with the mathematician. The first one you can use with a layman. It really rings with everybody, I think, the first one. Makes you think. The second one, for those who are mathematically inclined, it's very simple. We have a blind man. You take a manuscript that has 100 pages. You shuffle the manuscript, the pages of the manuscript. You tell him, "I want you to organize these pages in order from page 1 to page 100. So what does he do? He reaches out, he takes the first page, and he puts it in front of you. What's the probability that he will have picked page number 1 out of the 100? 1 over 100. Which is 0.01, right? In decimals. Now, for him to take page number 2, pull it out of that stack, and place it on top of page number 1, what would be the probability of that happening? It would be 1 over 100 times 1 over 99, right? Which would, for those who have calculators, this is the time to pull out your calculators. It would be 0.00, I think, 010, something like that. Now, what's the probability of him picking out number 3, page number 3? It would be 1 over 100 multiplied by 1 over 99 multiplied by 1 over 98. What is that number? 0.000000101? Pull out your calculators, do the math. What's the probability of him picking out page number 4? Do the math. 1 over 100 times 1 over 99 times 1 over 98 times 1 over 97 times 1 over 96, right? How close to 0 is that? And on and on. The probability of him putting these pages together is so impossible that it's just unfathomable that anybody would believe that he would be able to do that. Now, what about DNA? What about cellular structure? What about the little sodium-potassium pumps in the cellular structure? What about the coming together of compounds and chemicals? What about the coming together of this entire body, which is made out of these small cells? What about the coming together of this entire world? Of this entire world that has so much complexity in it. What could be the probability of this happening? I'm asking, what could be the probability of that happening? Impossibility that something like this would occur out of coincidence. Just like that raft coming together out of twigs is an impossibility. So now we've proven then that coincidence cannot exist. But there is something called relative coincidence. How? This is where we come back to choice. Say, hang on, you just said there's no coincidence. Yes, yes. But there's something called relative coincidence, and we say this tasamuhan. Tasamuhan meaning, we're not really serious that this is a coincidence. But we say that since we do have choice in our life, then when Brother Imran makes the choice to walk right, and I make the choice to walk left, and we're walking in parallel, then guess what's going to happen? Relative coincidence. We meet. Now there are certain factors that caused him to make that choice. And there are certain factors that caused me to make that choice. And so what happened? We met in the middle. Right? Relative coincidence. But even that is governed by what? By our own choices and by a program, a system, just like us moving the mouse to go to the start menu, right? When I go to the start menu, what happens? When I go to the start menu, what happens? It comes out, right? When it comes up, what happens? I click on programs. After I click on programs, if I click on Word and I mean to go to Excel, will I ever go to Word? No. I'll meet up with whatever's in Word once I open it up. I won't meet up with whatever's in Excel if I open it up. It's just how it's programmed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a program of choices in this world. That if you make a choice to go right, then there will be another if-else statement. If you go this direction, then this will happen. Else, this will happen. For those CompuSci people with us. If you make this choice, if you make the choice to say a nice word to your mother and your father in the morning, then they will make the choice to be nice to you and to treat you how you treated them. If we make the choice that when we see a stranger in the street, that we are kind to them, as opposed to being cruel to them, then what happens? Then they in turn will be kind not only to us, but to someone else. This is the program of choice. But what if I was to make the choice to do something wrong? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places in front of me the elements that are a byproduct of my wrong choice. But He always gives me an escape clause. He puts somebody in my way who made a choice to be there, and he's my escape route. So that I can have that. If you do this, then this. If you do that, then this will happen. There's always a right and left choice. There's always an escape route going to the right, even if you choose to go to the left. It's just how the program is made. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate programmer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver of knowledge. Why? Because He is knowledge. Allah nuru samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens, of the earth. What does that mean? It means that if I see everything through the light of Allah, then I will see the reality of everything. This choice of seeing the reality through the light of Allah, through goodness, through good deeds, is what will help me make the right choice for myself. The next thing that we deal with is we say, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who exists, who is one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has created a system that is flawless, in which there is no coincidence. What does He say about evolution? Because evolution has become a religion today. Even though we have a separation of church and state, what the secular, quote-unquote, anthropologists, scientists, have preached to the scientific world is that evolution is a reality and a truth. And this is a question that is posed to us in our schools, out in public, on TV. It's part of that media that is preached to us. It's part of that media that is exposed to all the world so that they believe the fact that they are trying to sell to us, a fact that is made up by them, when in reality it is only a theory. Not all anthropologists, by the way, accept the theory of evolution. Not all of it. We as Muslims, what is our opinion on evolution? Because, you see, evolution assumes that this world came out of coincidence. There are elements of evolution that are blurry and unclear. Like what? For example, evolution says that man evolved from ape. But, that's number one. But two, evolution says natural selection based on the survival of the fittest. Right? Well, we don't have a problem with that. Natural selection based on the survival of the fittest. We don't have a problem with the Big Bang Theory. We as Muslims believe in the Big Bang Theory. We have a problem with the Big Bang Theory being a coincidence. That's what we have a problem with. We don't have a problem with the Big Bang Theory. We have a verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this world came out of an explosion. Nowhere in the Quran does it say that it was a coincidence. Nowhere. So they've made a false conclusion. Yes, this world came out of a Big Bang. Yes, dinosaurs did exist. Yes, Neanderthals existed. We don't have a problem with any of that. We don't have a problem with the saber-toothed tiger or the mammoth or the Tyrannosaurus Rex or the Triceratops. We have no problem. We have no problem with the Ice Age. We have no problem with any of that information as Muslims. Islam does not have a problem with that information. It says, yes, this is real information. However, what we do have a problem with is the blurry false conclusions that they're trying to sell us. They're saying that Mother Nature created this world. Mother Nature governs this world. Well, we don't have a problem with that. What do you mean, Shaykhna, we don't have a problem? We don't have a problem with saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a program. You want to call that program nature. We're fine with that. We'll call it the world of al-khalq, the world of creation. You call it nature. No problem. What we do have a problem with is the fact that you don't have an answer for who created nature. Make sense? We don't have a problem with anything else other than who created nature, one, and two, the missing link. Lucy. What they're trying to sell to us as fact, even though it is theory, is the claim that nature came out of coincidence. We ask them, if nature is so organized as you say it is, then how can something organized come out of nothing and out of coincidence? When we proved already to them through the proof of organization that what? That everything that is organized has a creator of its organization. That the world is organized, minor premise. The major premise is, and everything that is organized has a creator of its organization. And we see this around us. We gave the example of our rooms, our offices, our labs. We gave the example of this world, and so the conclusion becomes that this world has a creator of its organization. Another important proof is that we see this world is in a constant state of change. And everything that is in a constant state of change is in a constant state of creation. Which means that this world, which is in a constant state of change, and everything that is in a constant state of change is new and created, then this world is created. That means that nature, if you say it is this world, must be created. See how logic is serving us here? Brother Imran? Yes, Brother Gazelle? We resolved the issue of coincidence through proving that coincidence does not exist. We resolved the issue of this world being created and nature being created through the proof that we just put forth. And now we need to look at this missing link. This missing link, Lucy, what is she? Did they find an entire body, a skeleton, a skeletal structure of something that they called Lucy? No, they didn't. What they found was part of a jaw. From here to here. Not even fully round. From that jaw, they produced the other side of the jaw. They produced the mandible, this top part. They produced the cranial structure, the size of the eye sockets, the size of the nose. They produced the neck, which they said has to be upright based on the skull that they assumed was created in a certain way, based on the lower jaw. And then, not only that, what did they do? They made up how the rib cage looks, how the arms look, how the abdomen looks, how the legs look, subhanallah. And this is science? Science based on imagination? Science is not supposed to be based on imagination. Science is supposed to be empirical. Is that not what the empiricists preach to us? So where is the truth in the information that's being sold to us? Where is it? Where is it? It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. But how do they sell it to us? By bringing a number of artists. In those days, they didn't have 3D animation. So they bring artists. They say, well, make the head this big. Make sure Lucy's a little hairy on the upper lip. Make her look upright. Give her a structure that looks like the structure of man. Oh yeah, there you go. Now she's that transition between ape and man. And this is science? We call this science? Don't they preach to us that science is an exact and empirical way of reaching truths? Then why do they mix things up like that? Why? Because they want us to move ourselves away from Allah. I don't think they do it on purpose, inshallah. I think they do it because they don't have the answer. They don't know how to differentiate between the truth and the untruth and the falsehood. And so the human mind starts to imagine things because this is the only thing it could get to. This is the unseen part that they don't have the answer for. Today you go to a doctor. A doctor diagnoses an illness that is terminal. Once the doctor can't do anything, what do they say? They say, nothing's in my hands now. What are they essentially saying? If it's not in your hands, whose hands is it in? Nature? And whose hands is nature in? And they say, now we're in the realm of philosophy. We're no longer in the realm of science. We're in the realm of metaphysics. Today we answered some very important questions, I think. We dotted our I's and crossed our T's, right? Would you say so? It's important for you to remember these proofs, these questions and the answers to them, because you will need them. In the West, you will need them. Believe me. You already know this. And these are important concepts for us to understand when we come to the idea of Karbala. For it is these very realities that we're trying to uphold, these truths. We're trying to find the answers It is these very things that Imam Hussein, Salamullahi alayh, worked so hard to uphold, to give us the ability to recognize the importance of our intellect, not to work on blind faith and accept blind faith, to think logically, intellectually, to be able to share these ideas with others, to be able to answer questions and falsehoods, to be able to question everything. That's important. That's an important part of being Muslim. In Islam, we are not taught to accept, we are taught to question. We are taught to question. Because if we don't question, we will never find the right answer or the truth. That is why Imam Ali Salamullahi alayh, he says very clearly, he says that he who asks a question receives the reward of asking that question, and he receives the reward of the answer to that question. And he receives the reward of the answer that everybody receives from that question. And he receives the reward of the effects of that answer and that question. Isn't that amazing? Doesn't that just make logical sense? If you do one good thing today and it has a positive effect on someone else, then what happens? The domino effect of goodness, not of negativity. If you do a negative, then you have a domino effect of negativity. No one knew this better or preached this better than Ahl al-Bayt, alayhim afdal as-salatu was-salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alihi. It was the holy household of the Prophet of Allah who would be the legacy that would propagate the importance of the intellect to mankind. Tonight is a very important night. It's a night that is dedicated to the holy household of the Prophet of Allah. And it is specifically dedicated to the women of Ahl al-Bayt. Do you hear me, sisters? The women, the mothers and the sisters, yes. Imagine, if you will, brothers and sisters. Imagine Sayyidah Zainab. Tonight, sisters, you are Zainab. Sisters, you are Zainab tonight. Imagine that you're Zainab. Imagine, dear mothers, that you are Lady Fatima. Imagine that you are Lady Fatima. One night, Lady Fatima alayha salam would call out to her daughter Zainab. She'd say to her, dear daughter Zainab, I want you to fetch the shroud that your grandfather, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, received from Gabriel alayhi salam. One day Gabriel alayhi salam brought down a shroud from heaven. He was commanded by Allah to give this shroud to Prophet Muhammad from paradise. Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam then gave this shroud to Fatima alayhi salam, and he would say to her, dear Fatima, cut the shroud into 4 pieces. The first piece is for me. The second piece is for you. The third piece is for your husband Ali. Who would the last piece be for? Why just 4 pieces? Lady Fatima told this to her daughter Zainab. Imagine, sisters, you're Zainab. You're hearing this from your mother and you're wondering, I have 2 brothers. Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein. Why is there only one piece left? Zainab alayhi salam would ask, who is this last piece for, our mother? Lady Fatima alayhi salam would say, and this last piece is for your brother Al-Hassan. Al-Hassan. Lady Zainab alayhi salam looked at her mother as the tears were welling up in her eyes and coming down her face. Lady Zainab, she said to her mother, sisters, what would you ask in this situation? Knowing that she didn't mention Imam al-Hussein, your brother, wouldn't you say, mother, what about Hussein? Say it with me. Imagine you're her. What about Hussein? Say it with me, all of you. What about Hussein? Say it with me, feel it. Feel the pain of Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam as she's asking her mother, what about Hussein? I can't hear you. Let al-Hussein and Sayyidah Zainab hear you. What about Hussein? Let Sayyidah Fatima hear you. What about Hussein? What about Hussein? I can't hear you. If I can't hear you, how can Sayyidah Fatima hear you? What about Hussein? Lady Fatima alayha salam would say, Hussein, my dear daughter, imagine you're Sayyidah Fatima. Imagine you have to tell this news to your daughter. You say to her, dear Fatima, dear Zainab. Zainab there is listening attentively to her mother as she's wondering, what about Hussein? And her mother says to her, Hussein, my dear daughter. As she's weeping, she says, Hussein, your brother, he will not need the shroud. He will not be in need of the shroud. Imagine you're Zainab, you ask, why wouldn't he need the shroud? What's going to happen to my brother? Imagine you're Zainab, asking your mother, what would happen to my brother? Why wouldn't he need the shroud? Ask Lady Fatima, why wouldn't he need the shroud? Say this with me. Why wouldn't he need the shroud? Why wouldn't he need the shroud? Lady Fatima would finally say to her, he wouldn't need the shroud because he will be cut into pieces. He will be martyred on the land of Karbala. Nothing there left of him. There would be nothing left for him for us to enshroud, dear daughter. Imagine yourself. Imagine that you're Zainab and you're wondering, how could this happen? How could this happen? Say to Lady Fatima, ask her, how could this happen? How could this happen? How could this happen to Imam al-Hussein? Imagine, skip through time. Imagine, for it was Lady Zainab alayha salam who heard these very words, who on the day of Karbala, on this day of great tragedy, that she would be standing on that hill, looking out through the dust, out for her brother and saying, what about Hussein? Say it with me. What about Hussein? What about Hussein? Dear brother, where are you? Where are you, Hussein? Imagine her on Al-Tall al-Zaynabi. For those who have been in Karbala, those who have visited Imam al-Hussein, you know where that hill is. You can imagine her standing there calling out, where are you, dear brother Hussein? Knowing that she won't be able to enshroud him. Knowing that she won't be able to wash him, there would be nothing left of his body. And she would say, dear brother Hussein, where are you? I don't see you, dear brother Hussein. With the tears welling up in her eyes, and when she does finally get to him and see him, what does she see? She sees a slaughtered body. She can't recognize her own brother, her own flesh and blood. All she sees is death. All she sees is her dear brother laying there, cut to pieces. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. How could anybody do this? How could anybody make such a terrible choice? Say it with me. Madloom Karbala. oppressed on the land of Karbala, Madloom Karbala, oppressed on the land of Karbala, Shaheed Karbala. This is the night of Fatima al-Zahra, Salamullahi alayha, let her hear you. Shaheed Karbala, martyred on the land of Karbala. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are from Allah and to He we shall return. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل بيت رسول الله إلى أي منقلب ينقلبون. And those who oppress the holy household of Prophet Muhammad will know what their eternal abode will be. Brothers and sisters, raise your hands to Allah and say with me, أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. O He who answers the prayers of he who asks. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. O He who answers the prayers of he who is in hardship. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. O He who asks and prays to Allah in times of hardship. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. O He who answers the prayers of he who is in hardship. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. O He who answers the prayers of he who is in hardship. And there are many who are in hardship. Many who are here who are in hardship. Many that we know who are in hardship from our family and our friends. Many who are sick and ask for your dua. Whether it's Sayyid Ahmed in Colorado, or Fatma Idris in Dearborn, or local sick family members that we might have, or the sister all the way in Najaf, 4 years old, losing her eyesight, or the Sayyid who is in Karbala, who has severe cancer in his kidneys. They all need your dua. Everybody needs your dua. I need your dua. Please don't forget everybody here in your dua, in your congregation. We ask you, Ya Allah, we ask you and we beseech you that you accept our deeds, the little of them and the great of them, Ya Allah. We ask you, Ya Allah, that you allow us to see the reality and the truth of things, that you help us ask the questions, seek the answers and receive the answers, Ya Allah. We ask you, Ya Allah, to brighten the journey and the path towards the truth for us, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to allow us to treat our brothers in Islam well and our brothers in humanity well, Ya Allah. We ask you, Ya Allah, to make us model citizens. We ask you, Ya Allah, to help us, help each other and help ourselves first and foremost. We ask you, Ya Allah, that you bring mercy unto us in this world, in our lives, and mercy upon the souls of our dearly departed, Ya Allah. And the last of our prayers is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. And that we recite the Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha on the souls of our dearly departed, on the souls of the dearly departed of the founders of the center, those who volunteer here, continue to volunteer, volunteered at one point, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, masbuqatan, and before it, as-salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah. Get up with me, please. Let's recite Dua al-Faraj. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma kun li walika al-Hujjata ibn al-Hasan. صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات. الله معكم جميعا إن شاء الله. يحفظكم الله يرعاكم ويخليكم. جزاكم الله برادر نافيد.